Hi everyone, welcome to the discussion on IAS Mains 2019 answers. This series is presented to you by Grace IAS. My name is Munish Bansal and today we are going to discuss the question number 2 of GS1. This question was related to 1857 revolt. This is the exact question which was asked in UPSC, that the 1857 uprising was the culmination of recurrent big and small rebellions, local rebellions that had occurred in the preceding 100 years of British rule. Elucidate. So let's start with the introduction part. In the introduction, you could answer any of these three questions. So you could answer what was the 1857 revolt, you could say which were the active areas during the 1857 revolt. So basically 1857 revolt was active in the central and the northern part of India. Or you could answer this question, that what were the major causes of 1857 revolt. I have chosen the third way of writing the introduction because it directly addresses the question that the pre-1857 revolts ultimately culminated into the 1857 revolt, and it culminated because the causes were the same. So in addition to answering this part in the introduction, you have to link it with the preceding rebellions. And your introduction has to be, cannot be more than 2 to 3 lines, because it is only a 10 marks question and you cannot afford to waste too much space in the introduction only. So I will be giving you 3-4 introductions and you choose whichever suits you the best. So for example, one way of writing the introduction is this, that the 1857 uprising is called the first war of independence. It is famously called the first war of independence, as it posed the first major challenge to the British rule. But its foundation was laid by 100 years of big and small local rebellions by the divergent section of society. So essentially it is a good introduction because you have used the keyword of the question, that is the big and small local rebellion, in your introduction itself. Or you could write that the British rule saw a major upheaval in the northern and the central India in 1857, but there had been multiple local uprising by various elements of society since the start of British rule. So you are telling that the rebellions which happened in pre-1857 were more local and the area in which it was active was more local. But in 1857 revolt, it became at a much more broader scale. It covered the whole central India and northern India. But this is also a very good and small introduction. You could also use this, that the revolt of 1857 was no sudden occurrence and was the culmination of a century-long resistance to the British rule. So you are essentially telling that the fundamental reason behind the revolt of 1857 was not just immediate, but some broad and fundamental reasons were behind it. And it was essentially the culmination of a century-long resistance to the British rule. So you are directly addressing the question. I have used this particular introduction in the answer which I have written. So basically the 1857 revolt was caused due to fundamental social and economic changes brought by British rule. These changes were also responsible for several rebellions between 1757 to 1857. I have not answered what were the causes behind the 1857 revolt. I have just broadly said that there were some fundamental social and economic changes which were brought by the Britishers. So these were the reasons behind the 1857 revolt, and the similar reasons were also responsible for the pre-1857 revolts as well. You could choose any of such introduction, or you can write an introduction of yourself, by yourself. So we will move on to the body part. Look, in this question, most of the aspirants will list out the various revolts which happened in the pre-1857 times. So in most of the standard textbooks and the NCERTs also, a long list is given of the pre-1857 revolts. It is all important that you write the names of these revolts, but in addition to that, you could also make a diagram. So you can make an India map diagram and show the various rebellions which happened in the pre-1857 time. Look, here I have used those rebellions which I am more comfortable with. You could use these rebellions in your diagram, or you could also use any other rebellions which you are more comfortable with. Okay, this is a personal choice, but the idea is that if you make a diagram, it will help you fetch more marks. Now, if we read the question again, then there are two keywords which I have highlighted here. The first is culmination and the second is recurrent big and small rebellions. It is important that you use these keywords as the heading in your answer, because it will tell the examiner that you have not diverted from the question and you have stuck to the question only, and it will help you get more marks, and it will also help you remain on focus while writing your answer. So basically there are these two major keywords, the big and small local rebellion and culmination to 1857 uprising. We'll first start with the first heading, that is the big and small local rebellions. There are two ways. One way is to just list out the rebellions which happened. So for example, there is Polygar rebellion, there is Ahom rebellion. You could just list them out, write 1 to 2 lines about each of them, and in this way you would write your answer. But I think the better way is that you divide your heading of big and small local rebellion into 4 parts. First is civil rebellion, the second is peasant rebellion, third is tribal rebellion, and the fourth is Savoy Mutiny. So you could use these rebellions in your subheading of civil rebellion, or you could use any of other civil rebellion in which you are more comfortable with. But the main point is that you have to tell 2 to 3 features of civil rebellion and use these the names of these rebellions as example. So what were the features of civil rebellion? What were the major causes behind the civil rebellions which happened? The first cause is that there was rapid change in the economy, such as deindustrialization happened after the start of the British rule. Especially it affected sections of society like artisans. They were rendered jobless and they had to migrate back to the villages. So there was huge distress in the society due to the economic hardship which they were facing. Then the zamindars and the polygars were losing their land and revenue rights, and because they were losing their land and revenue rights, they revolted against the British rule. For example, the Polygar revolt happened because the polygars, they were feudal titles which were given in South India. They lost their land and revenue rights because of the capture of Britishers in the Indian subcontinent. Then there was this contemptuous treatment. Contemptuous means hateful treatment of the native people. So basically the British rule was highly racist and highly discriminatory. This also angered the people, and this also made them revolt against the British rule. Not only the native people, the treatment of princes or rajas was also very bad by the Britishers. So ill treatment of princes and dispossession of rajas was also a very big reason for the revolts which happened in the pre-1857 time. For example, there is this revolt of Raja of Vijayangam. So the dispute was related to the tribute demand. The Britishers demanded tribute from the Raja, and the Raja didn't want to give this tribute, and so he revolted against the Britishers. Now we move on to the peasant movement. Like in the civil uprising, you could use these names or you could use your own names. But important is that you should know what were the features of the peasant movement. So what were the main features of the peasant movement? That it happened because of the reasons like high rent. So there was huge rent which was demanded, very extravagant rents and taxes which were being demanded by the peasants. And then there was this issue of commercialization of agriculture. You guys might have read about the indigo issue, that the farmers were forced to cultivate indigo. And then if you are not able to give your rent on time or give your revenue on time, you would be evicted from your land. And this also angered the peasants and they revolted against the British. Then we can also talk about the tribal revolt. 2 examples I have given, the Santhal rebellion and the Bhil revolts. The major causes of tribal rebellions are that they were very much close to their land and their forest, which was, and this connection of the tribals with the land and their forest was broken by the British rule. Then there was huge influx of non-tribals, and the tribal traditional practices, traditional agriculture practices such as shifting cultivation, this was curbed. So in the British rule, the forests were treated as the government property, and the linkage between the tribals and their forest was broken. So this was a major reason because of which the tribals revolted against the Britishers. Then we can also make this heading of Savoy Mutiny. When I read this, it was a shock for me that the 1857 revolt was not the first time when the sepoys or the soldiers mutinied against the government. Even in 1806 there was this Vellore Mutiny, and in 1833 there was the Sholapur Mutiny, and there are multiple other mutinies as well before the 1857. The reasons of these mutinies are very similar to the reasons of the 1857 revolt, such as the ill treatment of the sepoys and the religious interference in the sepoys. So, for example, in the Vellore Mutiny, the soldiers were forced to forced to replace the turban by leather cockade. So this angered the soldiers and they mutinied against the government or the Britishers. So this was the first heading. Now we move on to the second heading, that is the culmination to 1857 revolt. We'll tell how all this culminated into the 1857 revolt. So basically there was a simmering discontent in the society as a whole. The policies which led to the pre-1857 revolt was continued by the Britishers, such as there was this policy of expansion, there was this policy of economic exploitation. These kind of policies highly angered and highly affected and adversely affected various sections of society. Various sections of society like the rulers of Indian state, the sepoys, the zamindars, the peasants, traders, artisans, and these were essentially the people who revolted, who took up arms in the 1857 revolt. Obviously, we all know that the spark of the 1857 revolt was given by the greased Carthages. And it is also vital to write that the revolt started in Meerut. We all know it was started by Mangal Pandey, by the Bengal regiment which was positioned in Meerut, but it was eventually joined by the civilians especially of the northwestern province and the Awadh region. So these civilians were peasants, artisans, shopkeepers, and they joined the force, they joined the revolt. They revolted not only against the zamindars, the money lenders, because the hardships which they were facing, the zamindars and the money lenders were a crucial part, were playing a crucial role in that hardship. But they also attacked the government institutions like law courts, like police stations. So you could write these things also. Then in your answer you also have to write at least some names of the revolutionaries which participated in the 1857 revolt. We all know about Mangal Pandey. Then there was Nana Sahib. He was the adopted son of Bajirao II. He was banished from Pune, and the Britishers refused to give him the title of Peshwa. So he revolted against the Britishers in 1857 revolt. Then there was this Khan Bahadur of Bareilly. There was this issue of pension between Khan Bahadur and the Britishers. Then Kumar Singh was a Zamindar of Jagdishpur. So he had the same discontentment against the Britishers which any other Zamindar happened. He had this anger that lot of his land was confiscated by the Britishers. We all know about Rani Lakshmibai as well. Look, it is impossible to write all this in the body part. So you should know the role played by these revolutionaries and at least use the name of few of them. So at least use the name of at least 2 to 3 of them. And use the content which you are more comfortable with. It is not important to write all the content in the answer. In the 10 marks question, it is just important that you use the correct structure. The correct structure is, first heading is big and small local rebellions, and the second heading is culmination to 1857 revolt. Now we move on to the conclusion part. In the conclusion part, you could answer any of these 2 questions. First is impact of 1857 revolt. What was the impact of 1857 revolt? And the second is what role it played in the overall national movement. So one way of writing the conclusion is, you can say the 1857 revolt brought major changes like the end of company rule and the policy of annexation, and served as the harbinger of the future national movement. This is one way of writing the conclusion. The other way is, you can also write that the uprising of the pre-1857 and 1857 are still remembered as the example of Indian bravery and sacrifice. It motivated the future leaders and masses in our nationalist movement. Now I am showing you one answer which I have written. I have used some of the content which I have showed you right now. You could pause the video and read this answer to understand how to write the answer in a much better way, or you could go to the website. The link is given in the description, that is www.graceis.com. You could read the answer from there as well. This is the first page, that was the first page, and this is the second page. Okay, thank you.